Swifters, it's Prof G, and we're about to build Post Malone's and Pete Davidson's InkSpot app, the personal tattoo tracker. App neither formally associated nor affiliated with either Post Malone or Pete Davidson. This is one of 2 apps that my students had to build as part of an in-class final exam. I'm going to be showing each question as the app is built in stages, then I'll show the solution. Now, I'm not going to describe things in super depth because I'm assuming students watching this have already gone through the semester of Swift. If not, here's the URL, bit.ly/prof-g-SwiftUI, all lowercase, and there you can find over 100 flip class lessons for the low price of free. That's right, friends, a university course for free. Tell your buds. So here's the setup. Post Malone and Pete Davidson can't keep track of their tattoos. Both recognize that it's possible to be redundantly inked, unless copiously tatted folks have a way to quickly figure out where they're marked. They think building an app for this will serve a huge market that includes middle-aged moms, military grandpas, SoundCloud rappers, and D-list Instagram influencers. Post and Pete have gotten word of your Swiftie skills. This is what you're going to build. A simple app that allows you to enter new ink, describe it, offer notes, and select its location on the body. Each location on the body shows an emoji for easy reference. The app saves data locally, allows edit, delete, and move, and we'll build this with a custom enum and MVVM style. So let's build. So again, if you're following along and you want to test yourself, feel free to pause at each question. Question number 1 has us create an Xcode project named InkSpot, rename the content view to list view, download the resources for the app from this URL, add them to the project, including an icon file for the icon and another file for the launch screen. So back in Xcode, we'll create a new app project. We'll call this InkSpot. It's a SwiftUI project. I'll demonstrate this with a scheme set to iPhone 14 Pro. Now to rename the content view, I'm going to right-click on content view, select refactor, rename, and enter the new name as list view. Then over in the project navigator, I'm going to click on the asset catalog. I've already downloaded the files from the URL shown in question 1. I'll first highlight the 3 files for my InkSpot logo and drag them into the asset catalog. Then I'll click on App Icon, and I'll drag the icon right into the 1024 by 1024 box. Then to set up the launch screen, I'll click on the project file at the top of the project navigator, click on the Info tab, click the triangle to expand the launch screen row. In this UI launch screen below this, I'm going to click the little plus icon on this line. It enters a line below this. From the pull-down menu, I'll select image name, and the image name that I want to use is InkSpot-logo. We just added that to the asset catalog. Then I'm going to click in this image name line again, click on the plus sign. I'll select this option with image respect safe area insets, and I'll make sure instead of saying no, it says yes. Now, if we build and run, we see the InkSpot launch screen, and if I click on the home button, we can see the InkSpot icon. Nice! Now, question 2 states that we need to create a list view. I mentioned that the app will allow us to enter, edit, and delete items, so that's a big hint that we're going to need a for each inside our list view. And at this point, just to test things, we should create a temporary string array named tattoos. We need to do everything necessary so that the list view shows the elements of tattoos. The font should be title, the list style should be plain, there should be no padding at the edges of the list, and the navigation title should read tattoo. So in the project navigator, click on the list view. We'll create that variable to hold the tattoos temporarily. We'll say @state private var tattoos equals, and in between square brackets, I'm going to paste in the demonstration data that I copied from the exam, but it really doesn't matter what you have in here because we're going to replace this variable in the future. Now I'm going to replace vstack with list, and I'm going to delete what's inside the list. Then we want a for each statement inside of our list. It's possible to write our list so that we iterate right in the list, but we don't want to do that because we want to use our onMove and our onDelete at some point in the future, and we're going to need to do that on a for each statement. So I'm going to select the for each option with data ID and content. My data is going to be tattoos, the array that we created above. The ID is going to be /self for now. That will change in the future as well. I'll tab over, press return for trailing closure format, and we'll call the variable for each stage of the iteration of tattoos as tattoo, singular, and after the in for each of those, what we'll do is just show a text view containing tattoo, the individual value as we iterate through tattoos. We can see the list, but that's not the list style that we want. We also don't want any padding, so I'm going to highlight and delete that. So after the closing curly for list, we'll say .listStyle, and we'll pass in .plain, and in the curly below for each, I'm going to say .font, passing in .title. Now this looks good, but I also want to put this inside of a navigation stack. So I'm going to command click on list, and I want to embed a navigation stack around that list, but there isn't an option for embedding the navigation stack, so I'm just going to select group, and then change the keyword group to navigation stack. Then to add the navigation title, we need to do that inside the navigation stack's curlies, so I'll do that right underneath the list style modifier, and I'll say .navigation title, passing in the string tattoo. This looks good. Question 2 done. Now for question 3, we're going to start to build out our MVVM app. So we're going to create our model struct in enum. So we should create a new Swift file. This should hold the model, and it should be called tattoo with a capital T. We should add an enum to that. Call the enum location. The cases for the enum should be face, neck, torso, back, left arm, left leg, and right leg. Notice there are dashes in between those cases that have spaces in them. We're going to add a struct to the file, also named tattoo, and we should do what's necessary for the struct to be codable and identifiable. The property should include description of string, location, which is location, the enum that we just created, torso should be the default location, and we'll have notes, which is a string. Now I'm going to create this tattoo file just below the InkSpot app file. So I'm going to right click on InkSpot app. I'm going to select new file. This is going to be a Swift file. I'm going to name this tattoo with a capital T. And now before I create the struct, I'm going to create the enum. That's going to be named location with a capital L, colon. We'll specify string because we're eventually going to want to get the string value for the different cases. Comma, it's going to be case iterable because we're going to iterate over this at some point. Comma, codable, open and close curlies. If we forgot any of these things, Xcode would warn us about them at some point. And then below this, we'll put in our case. We can put them all on one line, and I'll paste in the different cases that I copied from the exam. Then below this, we can enter our struct. We're going to call this capital T tattoo, colon. This is going to be identifiable, comma, and codable, open and close curlies. Now to be identifiable, we need an ID property, and the way that we learned how to do this in to-do style apps is to say var ID colon string question mark. We'll use the fact that the string could potentially be a nil value as well when we figure out if we are adding a value or we're updating an existing value. Then below this, we'll enter additional properties, var description, setting this equal to an empty string, var location, colon. This is of type capital L location. We're going to set this equal to .torso initially, and then below this, we'll say var notes equals empty string. Next up, we're going to create a view model for this project and name it Tattoo View Model. We're going to properly set up that class so that it acts like an MVVM view model. We'll publish a property named tattoos, plural, which is an array of the tattoo struct that we just created. We'll initialize this to an empty array. We'll initialize an object of the class, and we're going to name this Tattoo VM and set it up so that it can be shared throughout the app. We'll do this in the InkSpot app file, but also do whatever is necessary to use this as an environment object in other views in the project when needed. So I'll create my view model below my tattoo view. I'll right click on tattoo view, say new file. This is going to be a new Swift file, and I'm going to call it tattoo view model. I'll set it up as class, tattoo view model, colon. This is going to be an observable object, open and close curlies. I want to create a published variable, so at published var. This is going to be called tattoos with a lowercase t, colon, and this is going to be of type an array, so square bracket, capital T tattoo. That's the model we just created, and set this equal to empty square brackets because the array is initially empty. Now, when we first want to create an object of this class, we got to create a state object, and since we're going to use this as an environment object, a good place to create that state object is in the InkSpot app file. That's the first file of our app. So right underneath the struct definition, we'll say at state object var. We'll call this tattoo with a capital VM after, setting this equal to tattoo view model, open and close parens. That will initialize or instantiate an object of this class type. Then we'll inject that state object so that it can be used as an environment object in other views in this app. So below list view, I'm going to say dot environment object, and I'm going to pass in tattoo VM, the variable we just set up above. Now it's time for the detail view, and as is my custom, I show a version of what the detail view should look like when it's complete. So we want to create a new SwiftUI view that's called detail view, and we're going to set it up as follows. We'll use this to create a new tattoo or edit an existing tattoo, so we need to be sure that we've got a variable in this view named tattoo of type tattoo. We'll update the view so that it displays default values. Description, which should have the default value anchor. Location, which should be left arm, although at this point we're not going to add that default left arm because we need to add the picker view for that, which we'll do in the next question. Notes, which should say, this is the same anchor used in my yacht. My yacht is very cool and it is a peaceful place, so this tat reminds me to be calm and that I'm rich. Create a VStack with elements left aligned with default padding. Include 3 text views, 2 text field views, 2 horizontal dividers, and 1 picker view. All text should be entitled to font. Those descriptive text views should be bold, and they should contain the text description, location, and notes respectively. The text fields should have the default text as description and notes respectively. All those text fields should use the rounded border text field style, and each text field should have bottom padding below it. The location text view should also be left aligned, and it should be followed on the same line by a picker view that is right aligned. Now you're going to add the picker view below so you won't see it here. And when you're done with this question, the screen should look as it's laid out at the right. Now I'm going to add my detail view below the list view, so I'll right-click on list view, select a new file. This is going to be a SwiftUI file, and I'm going to call it detail view. Now I mentioned we're going to hold the data on this page in a variable called tattoo. So we're going to say @state var tattoo : capital T tattoo, but we're not going to initialize this to anything, and that's because we're going to be passing over this tattoo from our list view. Either we're going to use a navigation link to pass over an existing tattoo, or we're going to pass over an empty new tattoo when we click on the plus button. We haven't added those things yet, but we will. Now down below in our preview provider, we get an error, so I'm going to backspace over detail view, and I'm going to start to type detail view again. Now this wants a tattoo, so I'm going to select tattoo, and I'm going to enter a new tattoo, capital T tattoo, and I'm going to select this option here with all the different values to enter. If I hold down option, this is going to enter all of these different values, so I can initialize them, press return. Now I'm not going to add an ID for the preview provider, so I'm going to highlight ID and the comma and delete that. But for my description, I'm going to pass in the string anchor. The location is going to be .left_arm, and for notes, I'm going to pass in, this is the same anchor used in my yacht. My yacht is very cool, and it is a peaceful place, so this chat reminds me to become, and that I'm rich. Now up in the body of the detail view, I'm going to get rid of this text view here, and I'm going to enter a VStack. Now I want the elements in this VStack to be aligned left, so I'm going to put in parentheses after the VStack and say alignment : .leading, then open and close curlies. I'm going to add some standard padding below the VStack, so I'll say .padding, open and close parens. I want everything inside the VStack to be title font, so I'll say .font, passing in .title just below the closing curly in the VStack. Then I'll set up a text view, passing in the string description with a colon. I'll modify this with .bold, make sure you got those parens, and then below this I'm going to add a text field, select the option with title key and text. The title is going to be the string lowercase description, and the text, remember this is going to be a binding value, so we're going to say $tattoo .description. We'll also set the .text field style to .round border. As requested, after the text field, we'll set .padding to .bottom. I'll add a spacer after this to push things to the top, and I'll add a divider, open and close parens, between the text field and the spacer. Then I'm going to highlight my text and text field views, and I'll copy that, and I'm going to paste them down below twice. I'll add a divider in here just before the last text view, and I'm going to delete this text field because this is going to be where I add my picker view. I'll change the second text view so that it says location. The bottom one should say notes, and the description for the text field for notes should read notes. It should refer to the text variable as $tattoo.notes. But we can see that the text field is not expanding to hold all of the text in the notes, so we want to change that, and we can do that pretty easily. First, let me change the font down here. Remember, it's supposed to be title 2, not title. In the text field, after the tattoo.notes, I'm going to add comma and a new parameter in here. This is going to be axis, colon, and we'll set this to .vertical. And look at that text field expands vertically. We can see all of our default text in the notes. Now for question 6, we're going to add the picker view to the location line. And when we do this, we should also write a function format picker that passes in the selected location for the tattoo and returns a string formatted so that any underscore in the location name is separated by a space and the words returned by the value are capitalized. Now note that this must work even if new values are added to the location enum. For example, you can't hard code the change from left_arm to capitalized left space arm. And a working version looks like this. So let's do it. So below the location text view, we're going to add a picker, choose the option with title, selection, and content. The title will be the empty string. It doesn't show up for this kind of picker in iOS. The selection will be $tattoo.location. Tab and press return on the content. We're going to put a for each in here. Select the option with data ID and content. The data is going to be capital L location all cases. The ID is \self. And tab over to content, press return. For the for each, we'll call each iteration lowercase location. And inside the content, we'll use a text view, passing in location.raw value. So our picker's working, but we want it off to the right of the text that says location. So I'm going to command click on text view, and I'm going to embed this in an H stack. Then I'll move the picker view below the text that says location. To push it over to the right, I'll put a spacer between the location text and the picker view. It's now where I want it to be, so now I want to make sure that I format the text that shows up as the different picker items. As requested, I'm going to do that with a function. So down here above the closing curly, I'm going to say func format picker. In between parens, I'll pass in a location colon, which is type location, capital L. Then I'll put in an arrow, and we're going to return a string, open and close curlies. And we'll create a new value to hold the formatting string. So I'll say let formatting string equals location.raw value replacing occurrences of with. And the of will be an underscore character, and the with will be a space between double quotes. Then I'll just return the value formatting string dot capitalized, and that'll capitalize it. Then back up here in the text view that's inside of our for each in the picker view, I'm going to get rid of location dot raw value, and I'm going to replace that with a call to format picker, and I'm going to pass in the location as location. We can try this out over in live preview, and it's looking great. Mission accomplished. Now for question 7, we want to enter the cancel and save buttons in the detail view. In the navigation bar, the cancel button should be on the left, the save button should be on the right. Clicking either at this stage should dismiss the view and return to the list view. We'll also eventually add code to save when the save button is clicked, but we're not going to do that now. The back button in the navigation bar should not show, and we should also not show a large white space between the toolbar and the description line. It should look like what's presented over here on the right. So back in Xcode, I'm going to put the toolbar below the VStack, so I'll code fold the VStack, and below the padding modifier here, I'll say .toolbar, open and close curlies, and I'll add a toolbar item view inside of this. I'm going to select the option with placement and content. Holding down Option key, make sure the placement shows up. Placement is navigation bar leading, tab over and press return on content, and in here we're going to put in a button. We'll select the option with title and action. The title is going to be cancel, and for the action we'll just press return for trailing closure, and we'll get to this later. Now we don't see anything in live preview, and that's because we don't have a navigation stack. We inherit that from the other view, but since we're not coming from the other view, we're just showing this current view in live preview, we're going to add a navigation stack to our preview provider. So I'm just going to command click on detail view, I'll select embed, change the container to navigation stack, and now we can see our cancel button up top. Now to dismiss, we also need to add an environment variable, so up top we'll say @environment, that property wrapper, not environment object, that's environment, and between parentheses we'll say \dismiss private var dismiss. Then inside the curlies of the cancel button, we'll just say dismiss, but make sure you add open and close parens afterwards. It's a weird SwiftUI variable that's called like a function. Then I'll just highlight this entire toolbar item, copy it, and paste it below the cancel button. This is going to be our save button. I'll change the placement to navigation bar trailing, and I'll change the text in the button to say save. Now in order to hide the back button, we'll also add a modifier .navigation bar back button hidden, and to make sure that we don't have that big blank white space that would normally hold a large title on this screen, we'll add a modifier .navigation title display mode, passing in .inline. Now on to question 8, we're going to edit the list view so that it includes a button in the upper right hand corner with the plus system image, and the standard edit button should be included in the upper left. At this point, we're no longer going to use the string array named tattoos. We should replace this with an instance of the tattoo view model that we created earlier, which is called tattoo VM, and the list should show all tattoos out of the InkSpot app, although we haven't added any yet. So back in Xcode, I'm going to unfold my code, but I'm also going to head over to the list view. We want to add our toolbar inside the navigation stack, so I'll add a .toolbar modifier below navigation title with open and close curlies, and inside we'll put a toolbar item. Select the option with placement and content with the option key held down so placement shows up. I'll set the placement to .navigation bar leading, tab over, press return, and add edit button with open and close parens. So this will add the standard edit button that becomes done. After we add the onMove and onDelete functions, we'll also see that that includes some additional UI elements automatically for us. Then I'll copy this toolbar item, I'll paste it down below. I'll replace the edit button in the second one here with a button that has an action and a label. Tab and press return for trailing closures. For the action, I'm just going to put in a to-do that says add sheet action toggle here. And for the label, I'll put in image, selecting system image, and pass in the string lowercase plus. And to move this over to the right, I'm going to change navigation bar leading in the second toolbar item to navigation bar trailing. Looking good. Now let's get rid of the state variable tattoos. That's an array of strings. We don't want this anymore, so I'm going to change the state variable to an @environment object property. Now I'm going to delete all this initialization code over here. We're not going to initialize this to a string array anymore. And remember, we've already instantiated a state object called tattoo VM, so that's what this variable should be named. And we just say colon after this and the type name, which is tattoo view model. Not open and close curlies because it's already instantiated. We just declare its type. Now to make sure that our preview provider behaves, we'll also go down here into the preview provider, and below list view we'll say .environment object, and we'll pass in tattoo view model, open and close parens go in here. Now we see an error up here in for each. Remember, we got rid of tattoo, so we need to perform a little bit of surgery here. We're going to iterate through the for each on tattoo VM.tattoos. We no longer need this ID parameter in here because our tattoo struct is identifiable, so we'll delete that. We'll keep calling each tattoo tattoo, but inside the text view here, we have to say tattoo.description. Again, nothing shows up because we don't have any data in here, but let's add some code to do that. Up next, we'll add a plus button to present the detail view, and clicking the plus button should present the detail view as a sheet with an empty tattoo ready to be edited by the user. So we know we show or hide a sheet by toggling a Boolean, so we'll create a property for that. We'll say at state private var is sheet presented equals false, because we don't want it to show initially. I'll put the sheet below the navigation stack, so I'll code fold the navigation stack, and then I'll say dot sheet, and I'm going to select the option with is presented in content, press return. We'll add our toggle variable as a binding variable, so it'll be $is sheet presented, tab over, press return for trailing closure. Now if we just present the detail view here, we don't have a navigation stack, so if I enter detail view, passing in as the tattoo, capital T tattoo, open and close parens, that'll create an empty tattoo to pass in, but let's try it out. Oh, and it's not going to work because I didn't toggle when I pressed the plus button, so let's unfold our code, and where I have my to-do comment in here, I'll just say is sheet presented dot toggle, open and close parens. Now if we press the plus button, so we see we're passing in an empty or blank tattoo, but we don't have our toolbar because the sheet doesn't have its own navigation stack. So back down here in the sheet modifier, I'm going to add navigation stack, open and close curlies, and I'm going to move my detail view in between those curlies, and now it works fine. So now in question 10, we'll add functionality to save and edit tattoo. So we're going to add a function named save tattoo to the view model that can save any new tattoo out of the detail view or save any edits made to an existing tattoo that's passed into the detail view. So we should call this when the save button is pressed in the detail view, and it should be implemented with MVVM techniques learned in class. Down below, we're also going to need to add a navigation stack to the list view so that we can edit the existing tattoo and take advantage of the edit capability of the save function that we add up here. We're going to update that list view so that clicking on an existing tattoo in the list will pass it in to be displayed in the detail view. And at this point, the tattoo passed into the detail view can be edited, and the edit should now display properly in the detail view when that save button is pressed. So since we're building this with the MVVM design pattern, let's head over to our tattoo view model, and we'll create that function as func save tattoo. We're going to pass in a tattoo, colon, that's of type capital T tattoo, open and close curlies. And again, we know from our earlier apps, like our to-do list, we'll say if tattoo.id double equals nil, open and close curlies, and what we're doing there is we're checking to see this must be a new tattoo. So we need to create an ID and append the new tattoo to the list of tattoos. So down below, we'll create a new variable called new tattoo. We'll set this equal to tattoo, the value we pass in, and we need to do this since the tattoo that we passed in is a constant. Remember, values passed into functions are constants in Swift by default. Then below this, we'll set our new tattoo.id property equal to UUID, open and close parens, .UUID string. Then we'll just say tattoos.append, and we're going to pass in new tattoo. Else, open and close curlies. If this is the case, then we must be editing an existing tattoo because we've already got a tattoo ID. So if that's the case, let's find the index value of the tattoo we passed in. We do that with if let index equals tattoos.firstIndex where, and in between curlies, we'll say $0 .id double equals tattoo.id, open and close curlies. Again, this will find the index of the tattoo passed in, and if we have that index down below, we can simply say tattoos in bracket index equals tattoo. That updates the element at that index with the tattoo that we passed into the function. Now let's head over to our detail view and call this in our save button action, but before we do that, we need to add our environment object to our detail view. So we'll do that up top with @environment object var tattoo VM. Remember, that's what we used when we created the state object on our app file. And we'll say colon tattoo view model. Then down here in the button action for the save button, we'll simply call tattoo VM.save tattoo, passing in tattoo as the tattoo. Now let's head over to the list view and try that out. So we'll press on the plus button. We see our sheet presented with a new tattoo. There's nothing in here. I'll add the heart tattoo in the location of the left arm. Note says, love you, mom. Let's save this. And it shows up in the list view. Nice. So adding a new tattoo is all set up, but to edit an existing tattoo, we've got to add a navigation link up here in our for each statement. We'll choose the navigation link with destination and label. I'll press return for trailing closure format. We'll move the text tattoo description up here for the label, and for the navigation link, we'll say detail view, and we'll pass in tattoo as our tattoo. Now we're not permanently saving data, so we've got to enter a new tattoo in here, so I'll add a heart tattoo on the torso with love you, mom. But then we can click on heart to edit it. There it is. It appears in our detail view. I'll change heart to mom heart. I'll change the location to left arm. I'll add always to the note. If we save this, head back, we see that we've changed things in our list view, and if we click on that list, we can see that our changes are continuing to exist in that tattoo. Nice work. Next up, we'll implement 12 and 13 together. So we're going to add delete functionality to the list view, do everything necessary so that the tattoo listed in the list view can be deleted either by using the edit button or by swiping left. And we want to make sure we implement this with the MVVM style, naming our delete function delete tattoo, and we should write code to call the delete function using the minimal SwiftUI shorthand that we learned in class and in our lessons. And we also want to add move functionality to the list view the same way. We need to do everything necessary so that we can click the edit button and we can change or reorder the list of tattoos. We again want to make sure we use MVVM style, call that move function move tattoo, and use the SwiftUI shorthand. First, let's add our functions to our tattoo view model. And just before the closing curly, we'll say func delete tattoo, and between parens, we'll pass in an index set colon as index set upper camel case. We'll open and close curlies, and below this, all we need to do is to say tattoos dot remove, select the option with at offsets, and I'm just going to pass in the index set that we pass into this function. Below this, we'll create another function, func move tattoo, open and close parens. We'll pass in a value we call from offsets, colon, that'll be of type index set, upper camel case, comma, and we'll also pass in a value to offset, colon. This is going to be an int, open and close curlies, and down below we simply call tattoos dot move, selecting the option with from offsets to offset, and I'll pass in from offsets and to offset into this function. Again, if you need explainers on this, how it works, why it works, go back and review the lesson for to-do list. I'm assuming you've done that and you just need a refresher if you want to double check your work here in this solution video. Now let's use these functions we just wrote. We'll head over to our list view, and it's really important that we call this not below the list curly, but below the for each curlies. I'll code fold for each to make sure I'm putting this in the right place, and then I can just say dot on delete, and for perform here, I'm going to delete everything that's after the perform so I can use the SwiftUI shorthand. All I need to do is name the function that I'm calling, so that's going to be tattoo vm dot delete tattoo. I don't need to pass anything in because on delete is going to give me the same values that I pass into delete tattoo. We can do the same thing down here with dot on move, and for perform here, we're just going to pass in tattoo VM move tattoo. We'll delete everything after this, so this is how the on delete and on move call look. That's SwiftUI shorthand. Let me refresh my live preview over here and let's try this out. I'll quickly add some tattoos in here. How about a heart and an anchor, and how about the Wu-Tang Last Supper? Then I'll click on edit, and look at that, the edit button turns into a done. I can see the interface changes a bit. I have these 3 drag lines over on the right hand side. I can drag my Wu-Tang tattoo to the top of the list, click done. The UI to be able to edit the list changes back to edit, looking good. If I edit an element like heart, I can change that as well. That looks good. If I swipe left on that tattoo, it deletes it. That's excellent. And I can also click on the edit button and click on the delete icon on the left-hand side, and I can delete this as well. Looking good. The on delete and on move work perfectly. Next, we'll add some super basic save and load data from the apps directory. Again, something else we also learned with our to-do list app. So we're going to use MVVM techniques to add both a save data and a load data function in our view model. We should call the function MVVM style at all locations where the app changes data or when the data is loaded into the app. So let's return to our view model and code this up. So below the closing curly in the class, we'll say func save data, open and close parens, open and close curlies, and we'll create a path constant with let path equals capital URL dot document directory dot appending, and we want to select the option component. And the component is just going to be the string for the file name that we're saving to our app's document directory on this device or simulator. I suggest naming these the same name as the variable that we're saving and loading data from. So we're just going to pass in the string tattoos lowercase. If you use tattoos with an S, make sure you consistently use the plural with the strings. Then down here, we'll say let data equals try question mark. We're going to encode our JSON. So we'll say JSON encoder, open and close parens, dot encode. We need to pass in the data to encode, and that's just going to be our tattoos variable. So we'll pass that in, and then below we'll say do open and close curlies, catch open and close curlies. To write that data out as JSON, we simply say try data dot write to, passing in path. And if this doesn't work, down here in the catch area, we'll print out angry emoji, error, could not save data, string interp, error.localized description. Now we should call save data every place where we've modified data in our code. So we'll do that as the last line in move tattoo, as the last line in delete tattoo, and as the last line in save tattoo. Now let's create our load data function with func load data, open and close parens, open and close curlies. We also need to get a path here, so we'll use the same line we used above. Let path equals URL dot documents directory dot appending. Select the components option, and again, make sure that we use the same string we used above, so that's tattoos with an S at the end. Then down below, we're going to read that JSON data in from the path. So we'll say guard let data equals try question mark data, and we want data contents of. We're going to pass in the path here that gets the data from that path. If it doesn't work, else in between curlies return. We're expecting this is going to work, so we'll say do open and close curlies, catch open and close curlies, and we'll put the results in our tattoos variable. So we say tattoos equals try JSON decoder this time. We're decoding, open and close parens, dot decode. This option has type and from. We're going to decode the JSON into, in brackets, capital T, tattoo.self. So we're decoding that JSON into an array of tattoo structs. And where do we get that from? We get it from lowercase data, the value we created with our guard let above. If this doesn't work, we'll put an error in here. I'll just copy this error up here and paste it down below, and we'll say error could not load data. Now, when do we want to load data? Well, that's going to be when we first create our state object using this class. So we're going to create an initializer function up top to do that. Just below, we've got our variable tattoos set up above. I'm going to say init open and close parens, open and close curlies, and just call load data open and close parens. That's it. Now let's head over to our list view. You can try this out by entering any data you want. So here I quickly entered a Swift tattoo, but watch what happens when I click on the play again or refresh button down here in the live preview. We see that when we restart, we load in the data for the Swift tattoo. Our load is working, our save is working. Just that I've got some data to work with, I'll add some more tattoos. How about Mom and Thug Life in honor of Tupac? Now we always add a little bit of challenge in the end, and this last bit is going to distinguish truly excellent exam, so it's 4 points all or nothing. It's a last bit of user interface snazziness. Only do this if you can implement it without breaking your app. You don't want to submit a broken app. Again, the credit is going to be all or nothing on just this last part here. So Post and Pete love your work, but they want one last set of updates. They want the list view to look like it's represented below down here with an emoji indicating the location of the tattoo just to the left of the description, and a line below both of those things with the notes. So here's how we should implement this. Include a function in the location enum that you created named emoji that when called will return the appropriate string containing the emoji for that enum location selected. So the emoji for the different cases should be as you see it right here. The list should show the emoji to the left of the tattoo's description as you see it right here. The notes line should be below the emoji description line on a single line, not multiple lines. If it goes beyond that line, it should continue with 3 dots at the end, just like this mom line down here. It should be in Title 3 font, and it should be italicized. And an example of how this works is right here for you to check out, but also required. Add the appropriate icon to the left of the text. We should actually call that emoji. Add the appropriate emoji to the left of the text that shows up in the picker view on the detail view, and it should look like you see it below. So let's go ahead and implement this, Swifters. Remember that enum is in our tattoo model, so let's head over to the tattoo file. Before the closing curly in the enum, I'm going to say func emoji, open and close parens, draw an arrow, and we're going to return a string, open and close curlies, and I'll say switch self, and between parens, I'm going to pass in all of that content showing the different cases and which emoji they're associated with. I copied them from the exam, so I'm just going to paste them below and modify this. And then just before each one, I'm going to say case, so like case.face, all the way down, and then after each of the different elements, I'm going to put in a colon, and I'm going to return the emoji. So this is what our function should look like. Again, we switch on self, so we switch on whatever the location case is, and depending on that case, we are going to return the appropriate emoji. Now that we've got this, let's first use this in the list view. And the work we're going to do here is going to be in the label portion of our navigation link. Now I'm going to have 2 lines, one on top of the other, so I want to create a V stack with an alignment of dot leading, but then in between the curlies, I'm also going to add an H stack as the first element inside of that V stack, and it's going to include the text that has tattoo.description, but just before this, we're going to add our emoji. To do this, we just add a text view, passing in tattoo.location.emoji, so there's our function with open and close parens after it. And look at that, we now have our emoji icon showing up to the left of our items in our list view. Now let's add our notes line below this. So after the H stack, we'll say text, passing in tattoo.notes. For italics, we say dot italics, open and close parens. We'll set the dot font to dot title 3. We're on multiple lines down here, so to limit that, we'll say dot line limit, passing in 1. Just as requested, this cuts things off so that we only have one line of notes with dot 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 after them if they would otherwise go on multiple lines. Perfect. Now let's make our change on the picker view to the detail view. So over in the detail view, inside of our picker, now the change we're going to make is going to be inside the for each statement of the picker view. And when we display that text view, what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to create a string with 2 string interps inside. Then I'm going to cut this format picker call in here and paste it into the last string interp. Then in the first string interp, I'm going to call location dot emoji, the function that we just wrote. And just to make sure that I save this value as location properly, I'll say below the text dot tag location. Now we can see when we pull down this menu, we see all of these nice emojis. We can change them if we'd like. Let's head back to list view and try out the app. So we'll click on plus. Let's add the Wu-Tang Last Supper tattoo. I've got that on my back. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Save this. This shows up perfectly in our list view. We can head back, change these items, change them back. Everything's working perfectly. So Swifter, this is the InkSpot app. I hope you did well, and for my students, they always know there's an opportunity to retake the exam for a lower total score. I hope you learned a lot, Swifter. Keep hacking.